Nobel Peace Prize laureate, two-time prime minister, and ninth president of the State of Israel, the legendary Shimon Peres, left a huge hole in the hearts of millions when he passed in 2016. But few people actually ever got to know Peres on a deeper level. So thankfully, there's now a new biopic streaming on Netflix that sheds a light on the late leader like never before. And joining me to discuss it is executive producer, co-writer, and Academy Award-winning director of Never Stop Dreaming, the life and legacy of Shimon Peres by Moriah Films, Richard Trank. Richard, it's great to have you. Thank you so much. Now, you have over 50 hours of interviews with Peres that you use for the film, but that means that you started working on this since at least 2016, no?
Yes. I mean, what had happened was over the years, I had interviewed President Peres for a number of my films, starting back in the 90s. And we were there in December of 2015 at the Peres Center to do an interview with him about a documentary that I was starting at the time about David Ben-Gurion, because he was the last living link to Ben-Gurion. And as we were kind of tweaking lights and tweaking the cameras, one of his aides, Ayelet Frisch, was talking to me and said, you know, you do all these films. Why don't you want to do a film about Shimon? They all called him Shimon. And I said, well, I'd love to do a film about him. In fact, in 2012, when I was interviewing him for the film that I made about the life and legacy of Theodor Herzl, I said to him, you know, Mr. President, you know, you don't have to give me an answer today or tomorrow or even a year from now, but when you're ready, I'd love to make a film about your life. And he looked at me and kind of smiled and he said, who would watch such a film? And I told that to Ayelet, and she said, well, you asked the wrong person. He's very modest. Are you serious? And my boss happened to be with me, Rabbi Marvin Heyer, who founded Moriah Films, and he said it would be our greatest honor. It was probably the last extensive interviews that he did about his life.
All right, well, aside from Peres' interviews, the film is narrated by George Clooney, and it features interviews with the Peres family and friends, world leaders like former Prime Ministers Tony Blair and Benjamin Netanyahu, and former United States Presidents George Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. What went into getting all of these big names to do their part?
Well, you know, when you contact people and say, hey, I'm making a film about the life and legacy of Shimon Peres, and we're doing it in cooperation with the Peres Center and the family, people are, you know, they say yes. In the, the instance of President Obama, he had just left office a few months previously when we did his interview. It was, I think, the second interview he gave after leaving office, because at the time he was focusing on his book. He wasn't doing interviews. President Clinton, we know him. We had done a couple of interviews, previous films with him. He could not have been more, more pleased to be asked, and gave us a wonderful interview. President Bush, who doesn't really like to do interviews, said yes right away. And of course, you know, Prime Minister Netanyahu, who he and Shimon Peres were such great rivals, but at the same time, there was this close relationship between Peres and the Netanyahu family.
Wow. So the film dives into Peres' work in establishing the State of Israel, his military involvement in various wars, the Entebbe operation, and his work on Israel's nuclear program, and of course, groundwork towards the Oslo Accords and the Abraham Accords. What surprised you most about what you learned?
I always knew that this was somebody who, no matter what he was going through, was always optimistic and didn't let what was happening at the moment defeat him. But it was incredible to me about how optimistic he was and how determined he was, and selfless in many ways. I mean, this was somebody who was, he said to me once, as we were speaking off camera, he says, I do have an ego, because I was, he didn't want me to think that, all right, he was this absolutely perfect person. But everything was about the state. Everything was about Zionism. Everything was about building up the state. And as I think it was Michael Bar-Zohar, one of his close friends and his biographer, Bar-Zohar had said, he spent so many years focused on a strong defense for Israel. And then he got to a point in his life when he realized, okay, Israel is now the strongest nation in the region, one of the strongest in the world. Right. We can take a chance trying to reach out to our neighbors and make peace.
Richard, thank you so much for joining, and congratulations on such an amazing film.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Aaron. Be well.
Hi everyone, it's Emmanuel Kadosh. I wanted to invite you all to subscribe to ILTV Plus, where you can find our daily news and updates about Israel. And not only that, but live feeds, entertainment, our kosher food show, and so much more. Needless to say, your subscription to ILTV Plus helps us grow and create more content while also supporting the state of Israel. Our app is available on all platforms and devices, so I'll see you guys there.